Hello, my name is Daniela Diaz Caballero, and for this video, I will be discussing Physics 2212 Lab 1, Charge Tapes. During this video, I will give a brief introduction to the experiment, which will include the purpose of the lab, any assumptions that were made, and the results that were discovered. From there, I would also include the data and observations from the experiment, as well as my computations. Last but not least, I will conclude by discussing theoretical questions that can be inferred by our findings of the experiment. The purpose of this experiment is to understand the interaction between charged objects and everyday objects, as well as determining approximately how much excess charge is on one piece of charged clear tape. The fundamental principles we covered during this lab was Coulomb's law to help us calculate the electric field of a charged object. From this experiment, the result was that the two tapes repelled each other due to them having the same charge. The charge of the tape was 1.4 e to the negative 8 coulombs. Before going into the calculations from the experiment, let's discuss the pre-lab instructions and expectations going into the experiment, as well as our assumptions. For this lab, we were to determine whether tape had positive or negative charge by testing its attraction to household objects like a table or a book. Also, we were meant to calculate charge from its displacement from observing a repulsive force by floating a U-charged tape above another. From this, we used tapes as point charges in order to create a code and glow script to illustrate the lab, which will be shown later in this presentation. Going into this lab, the assumptions were, first of all, that air resistance was negligible. Second, we treated the tape as if it was a point charge. Third, we assumed that the charge was in the center of the tape. And last but not least, we assumed that the U tape had the same charge evenly distributed. During the experiment, the following observations were made. Between two U-tapes, there was a strong repulsion. Between one U-tape and a neutral object, a book, there was a strong attraction. Between one U-tape and a neutral object, which was a hand, there was a strong attraction. And between one U-tape and a charged plastic pen, there was a strong attraction. Since the charged plastic pen is negative charge because it was rubbed through hair and the U-tape was attracted to it, we can conclude that the U-tape has a positive charge. Now, let's move on to our data collected from the experiment. The mass of the tape was 0.0002 kilograms. The length of the tape was 0.2 meters. The width of the tape was 0.019 meters. The separation distance at which tape B began to float was 0.03 meters. From this, we can move to our first set of calculations. The magnitude of the gravitational force, which was mass times gravity, was 0.00196 newtons. The electrical force, which was the opposite sign of it, was negative 0.00196 newtons. Using those two values, we used the electric field formula for a point charge in order to determine the charge of the tape, which was 1.4 e to the negative 8 coulombs. For our second set of calculations, which are seen here, we calculate the corresponding number of electrons, the number of atoms on the sticky surface of the tape, and the ratio of the number of electrons to the number of atoms on the sticky surface. Here you will find that the number of electrons was 8.75 e to the 10 electrons by dividing the number of excess charge by the value of 1 electron. Then to find the number of atoms, we calculate the area of the tape, which was 0.0038 meters squared by using length times width, and then the area of the atom by using length squared, which resulted in 1 e to the negative 20 atoms. From there, we did area of tape divided by area of atom to get 3.8 e to the 17 atoms. Last but not least, we calculate the number of electrons per atom by dividing number of electrons by number of atoms to get 2.30 e to the negative 7. Now we're going to transition and talk about our computation model and code. As you can see, my code shows a function for calculating magnitude of gravitational force, electrical force, number of electrons, number of atoms, and ratio of numbers of electrons per atom. You can also see a display between two charged tape, each shown as a single point charge, on the right, exerting an electric force on each other and experiencing a gravitational force. Last but not least, we will discuss some theoretical questions that we can infer based on what we learned on this experiment. The first question was, what if electrons had positive charge and protons had negative charge? What would change about the observations you made with your tapes and other charged objects? If this were true, the direction of the electric fields would be flipped. This means that the tape would have a negative charge and all of the signs of the calculations would be the opposite of what they are right now. But it's important to mention that as long as the charges remain the same magnitude and opposite, the behavior would remain the same. The second question was, why is it important to handle the charged tape as little as possible? What happens when the charged tapes come in contact with your hands or other objects? Since the charge is absorbed to the neutral object closest in contact, such like a hand or a book, we want to avoid handling the charged tape as little as possible. Now, based on this experiment, we can have a few conclusions and observations. So the first conclusion would be that the objects that have opposite charges are going to have a strong attraction to one another as seen between the charged plastic pen and the U-tape, while objects that have similar charge are going to have strong repulsion to one another as seen between the two U-tapes. We can also conclude that when momentum is zero, the gravitational force is equal to the electrical force because this means that there are no forces acting on the tape. Last but not least, from our calculations, we concluded that the magnitude of the excess charge on the tape is 1.4 e to the negative 8 coulombs. Thank you so much for watching, and please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I will see you here for next time for Lab 2. Below, you can find here my GlowScript lab URL if you want to see it up close. Thank you.